Hey, I'm back from a long hiatus and hell. Trade secret? But that's where all video essayists come from. Where else? So, I was watching the latest episode of Helluva Boss, and I felt an incredibly bizarre sensation. I felt my bias run out. I was out of patience. Too many mistakes piled up. My hopium lasted 2 seasons, but I just had to admit it to myself. Helluva Boss kinda isn't good.
Huh?
Okay, I know that's confusing. After I cut an intro that aggressively cool, I have a negative opinion of the show? You might be wondering if I'm part of the BPD, the Police Department of Alarming Mood Swings. Or if the angle to this video is that I'm some sort of disappointed fan of the show. Well, to answer the second question, kinda. I don't think I'm a fan of Helluva Boss. I'm a fan of the story of Helluva Boss. The aesthetics and vibe of the show never grabbed me the same way it seemed to do so with others. Bit too hot topic for me. But the Vivzy Pop story? It's an underdog story that inspired hope in the industry. It's the story of indie animation on the internet competing with industry professional shows. Sure, internet indie animation has almost always existed, but they've always been clearly indie, riddled with obvious compromises. It's cool they exist, but they never made the feeling of, oh, this isn't like a real TV show, go away. But you compare Helluva Boss and Hazbin Hotel to any other indie animation, and even to the untrained eye, they blow them out of the water. Hell, compared to actually fully budgeted shows on streaming services, Helluva Boss looks great! The problem with indie animation is getting the cash to fund it. But with how many fortunes you see being earned on social media, I always wondered if that money and clout could be funneled into something useful, if it went into the coffers of people willing to make a cool show. I wondered if the internet could be an alternative funding avenue for shows, instead of having to beg publishers and producers for the massive budget TV shows need. And Vivzy Pop seems to have done that. Helluva Boss looks as good as it does, with episode lengths comparable to regular TV shows. It's got a pretty hefty voice cast, like it has Richard Horvitz as a main character?
First off, Dad, I'm Sam!
Each episode gets millions of views within hours of being uploaded. It has almost every ingredient of a viral success story, and gives hope that maybe internet-based indie animation can be a real thing. So having Helluva Boss kinda suck obliterates that hopeful narrative. The reason why Helluva Boss kinda sucks, emphasis on kinda, is simple. The writing's just low-key bad. No, it's not the worst thing ever. It's not bad enough to write Greek epic-sized video essays about, at least not for me. Not bad enough for me to take a diarrhea dump on a Blitzo costume in pure rage or something. The show's writing isn't so bad it's incoherent, and this show tries to wow the audience every episode with big emotional scenes or action set pieces. I guess that's where the creator Vivian's love of musicals comes in. I assume those end theatrically? I'm just guessing, I don't like theater.
Prisoner 2460-2060-451!
So, the obvious hallmarks of bad writing, stuff not making any sense and building up to nothing, aren't there. So, why is the writing bad? The writing is bad because despite all the imaginative visuals and the crazy premise, it lacks creativity. You'd think from the pilot, or episode 1, that the show was about demons from hell working a pseudo-office job focused on assassinating humans. It's clearly the pitch of the show. But you'd be wrong, because the show changed its mind. The entire reason this video exists was that moment I brought up earlier. It was when I was watching the latest episode that I had the hopium tube ripped right off my face. Because all of a sudden, it felt like I had been watching the same story for 3 years. I realized there were only 2 story ideas Helluva Boss had. Relationship issues and daddy issues. Problems with exes and problems with dads. The only variance is how much sympathy you're supposed to have for the ex or dad. This ex was bad, this dad is bad, this dad is bad but trying, this ex was bad but so were you. It pushed me absolutely over the edge when the latest episode was both about exes and daddy issues at the same time.
Did you date him too?
Get over here and give your daddy a hug.
Seriously, if you summarize the core conflict of every episode, almost all of them fall under this. I know you're supposed to write what you know, but fuck, you gotta hide the fact you only know 2 things better. I'm not offended that the series, and writers, don't have a particularly deep well of personal inspiration to pull from. It's that they keep repeating the same exact story over and over again. Some might say this is a focused theme.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly.
Which you can have, but you need different ways to explore those themes. If you don't, it's not a theme, it's a formula. You can only feel so sorry so many times in a row for the same exact things. Aww, insert character here, is so sad. They had such a rough past with their dad and or ex. Gosh, I sure hope you are both bad at pattern recognition and are an infinite well of easily won-over compassion. Otherwise, the show will put you to sleep.
You're like, I'ma care about this. I know it. I know. Oh, wow. I don't give a damn.
I'm not aiming to be reductionist here, there's just so little difference between episodes. Hell, I'm pretty sure the second episode of both seasons have the same core story. Octavia feels neglected by her dad. Her dad loves her, but he's just bad at it. And he'll do his best to never have that happen again. Oh wait, it happened again. A season later. Season 3, Episode 2 will be about. I'm trying to think about who in the main cast doesn't have relationship and or daddy issues. Oh god. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Okay, there was some advice I was gonna give, but I gotta explain how bad this is first. Pitting that for later. This is the problem with your stories being so repetitive. If your stories are unimaginative and repetitive, the characters have to be too, to tell those stories. And to hit the same emotional beats with the same characters, they have to be static, unchanging, boring. They have to come out of those huge emotional scenes exactly the same, removing any weight those scenes could have. See Octavia, and honestly Blitzo too, who doesn't act too differently despite all the focus episodes. Then there's just Luna.
I mean, try to cut your dad some slack. He may not always get it right, but he's trying. That's more important than you think.
Sorry, I'll never replace you no matter what you do.
You're good.
Let me demonstrate how nothing these characters are. This character writing exercise is directly taken from Escapist company carrier Yahtzee. Update, he decided to stop carrying them. In a game dev diary from a couple years ago. Wow, it sure is hard to find good writing tips. Usually you should do this during the writing process, but his writing advice is actually a pretty good way to autopsy characters. Yahtzee explains the first 4 questions you need to ask when writing a character.
Question 1. What does this character want? Think less in terms of concrete plot outcomes and more in a general sense of what motivates them. Gaining power, being loved, etc. It could be that they already have what they want, in which case, how do they hold on to it? Question 2. What is this character's defining strength? A plot is a sequence of situation changes. What is it that qualifies this character to be an agent of those changes? Question 3. What is this character's defining weakness or flaw? What is it about themselves that they must overcome to achieve their goal? Finally, question 4. What are this character's quirks, the little irrational weirdnesses that make them human?
Let's fill this out so you can better understand my horrified revelation earlier. You start to see a pretty clear picture of why the characters are so weak. Look at how similar they are. They're virtually interchangeable. They have little different to them in terms of what they want. None of them have any noteworthy ambitions or desires. They all basically have the same role in the group because they affect the plot in the same way. Everyone is just good at fighting. That's it.
That's all I've got. That's all I've got.
Jeez, mate.
Their flaws, their personal hang-ups that prevent them from getting what they want, are also either identical or actually non-existent.
Another thing worth considering in a story with multiple characters is how they interact with each other. I find it useful to consider them as pairs. Could you put any two characters in the cast together and imagine how they'd interact? Do they have common ground, or some clear point of contention that drives arguments? One of my favourite TV shows growing up was Red Dwarf, which is a good example. You can pair off any two from the 4 central cast members and feel like there's a clear dynamic there, and something the two of them can do together or argue about, which is what makes it work so well as a sitcom, which is after all mainly about characters talking in a room.
This blew my mind when I heard it, because it's such elegant and efficient advice. With character dynamics, you're fleshing out 2 characters at once. Without directly telling the audience how a character views the world, you can imply that by how they see the other characters. You can see the many things a character likes and dislikes in the world by how they react to the people that are a part of it. Well-explored character dynamics means a full chart. So, how does the Helluva Boss character dynamic chart look? Oh, fuck. This is just sad. Forget the Goetias for a second, which I threw in because they're big recurring characters. Look at your main 4 characters. They're together like every episode. After working what seems like months or up to a year together, they barely care about each other. What's worse is that these are the exact same character pairings from the first episode. That's how unchanging the stories and characters are. Your found family doesn't get along well or get along poorly. They just exist in the same location as each other. Luna knows Moxie as well as you know the Uber Eats driver that brought you McDonald's. Like, forget the dramatic potential of it all. The Helluva Boss writers never thought about having unique dynamics for jokes? That's comedy show writing 101. Having your different personalities have banter, bounce off each other, have bands. Yahtzee suggests putting your character pairs together in an empty room to see how they interact. This is also what Community did for its entire show run, beautifully, having everyone just interact in their study room at the start of the episode.
But maybe when Jeff gets here, we could talk to him as a group about his tardiness.
Oh, come on now. Don't use that word around, eh, Ben?
But for Helluva Boss, considering almost every episode starts with our main cast in an empty meeting room, I know exactly what they do. Say nothing to each other. Make small talk that goes nowhere.
Oh, I checked the scale today, and it said I lost 2 pounds this week.
Ask where the character they actually like is.
Your dad's really worried about you.
That's why you're here instead of him. He couldn't be bothered to keep his promise, and now he can't be bothered to come and get me himself.
Where is Blitzy? Where's my baby?
This is the definition of a cast with no chemistry together. As a point of comparison, I will compare the entire main cast of Helluva Boss's character pairings with the protagonist of Community, Jeff Winger. They're both comedy shows with season-long character arcs, so it feels like a fair comparison. And in the spirit of said fairness, Community has way more seasons and episodes, so I just compared the first 13 episodes of Community to the first 13 of Helluva Boss. As you can see, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, this is just one guy. He's got as many dynamics as the entire cast of Helluva Boss. Deeper ones too.
Abed, it's called chemistry. I have it with everybody.
Everybody?
If you know about the creator of Community, Dan Harmon, this isn't that surprising. Like his self-inserts, the man clearly was raised by TV, and heavily internalized the structure of TV plots. He made his own version of the 3-act structure, specifically formatted for compelling TV. Even made fun of the tool in a Rick and Morty episode because of how much he uses it.
We have to leave the train? We don't have to do anything, Morty. This is just a structural guide. We're obviously going to impart our own style.
The point being that this is the difference between Community and Helluva Boss. Creator intent. The intent of Community was to tell engaging stories that were funny and could be emotional. The intent of Helluva Boss is to wallow in emotional baggage, look good, and be R-rated Looney Tunes. In Community, characters had sad backstories as brief, infrequent explanations for their character and roles in the story. In Helluva Boss, the sad backstories are the character and is the story. The characters are completely defined by their pasts, never moving on from them and never learning from them. None of them ever talk about or work towards their futures. Watching Helluva Boss is like hanging out with a unique and energetic friend, but the night always inevitably ends with them crying about the same trauma that you yourself have gotten numb to hearing about and long since given up trying to help with.
You still shove away anyone who gets too close until they resent you for being a selfish, shitty.
That sounds pretty shitty, Stan.
Your self-conscious is trying to tell you that you simply cannot fathom proper intimacy.
Yeah, you already told us that.
Well, it happened a lot!
To be clear, while it's very funny that the only thing the show, and thus the writers can talk about, is how sad they are from their fucked up dad and relationship issues, it's not a death sentence. Creators can totally examine their issues with their art. But you usually hide that with unique stories, well-explored or developed characters, and dynamics. Mostly for the audience's sanity. But because this show has none of those, we just got to plainly see Vivian's therapist notes. Like, the least shitty dad in the show is a guy who literally says nothing. And the healthiest, most prominent romantic relationship in the show feels as real and genuine as a greeting card aisle. At this point, I kind of feel bad. Do they even know how to write healthy characters? Do they even know what that looks like? To understand how this show writes people without brain problems, there is one character that embodies it. One character that perfectly portrays the show's understanding of mental wellness. Some of the eagle-eyed viewers in the audience might have noticed a standout in the dynamics chart. A character that only had a single relationship dynamic, which is less than Octavia, who has much fewer appearances. Gotcha! Yeah, don't let those Midna-esque chicken drumsticks fool you. This character isn't thick. She's actually paper thin. It's time to talk about Millie. Now, Millie is Moxie's wife. She's always with him. She's good at fighting. She smiles a lot. Yeah, sorry, that's all I got.
That's it. That's it.
You see, Millie comes from a healthy family, and that means that this writing team can't make her interesting, and she is so nothing I barely remembered she existed. The reason I'm talking about Millie at all, despite her having the power to leave my memory the second she's off screen, like some sort of Doctor Who monster, is because of Twitter. Specifically, Vivian's Twitter, where she made a tweet addressing criticisms about Millie. And another. And another. And oh my god, there's so many. The gist of it being that Millie is just healthy and not damaged like the rest of the cast, so she just seems shallow in comparison. She also doesn't get that many focus episodes. So the unobservant audience just missed how great of a character Millie is. Which is a crazy claim, because what I missed was that Millie was a character in the show. Having such a strong creator defense be completely disproportionate to the actual impression she left on me, the audience, meant I had to analyze Millie. Well, as much as you can analyze empty space. However, before I get into that, I'll give credit where credit is due. The Twitter thread was surprisingly respectful. I can't remember the last time a head honcho behind a huge creative project ever addressed criticisms like the Millie ones. Like, who is this polite in response to that much negative feedback? Vivian shows more thoughtfulness in public than a lot of industry professionals. So, even though I basically disagree with all of the content of the message, I appreciate the context. It's very nice. That aside, back to my point. Let's dig into the claim that Millie is well written, shall we? Millie's characterization isn't blink and you might miss it, it's stare as much as you want, you can't see shit. Millie is seen as boring not because she is healthy, but because she is a nothing character. The audience is disappointed that all she is Moxie's wife, because that's the only dynamic she has in the entire cast. Blitzo has a mildly positive but ultimately neutral opinion of her. Luna sure knows Millie exists. Even her relationship with Moxie doesn't tell you much about her. They love each other in the most generic way possible. Moxie does a grand romantic gesture and she likes it. That's it. And when they're all together, boy does she ignore everyone else in favor of Moxie. In a comedy show with long dramatic character arcs, Millie contributes no jokes or chemistry and adds nothing to the character drama. And also not enough focus episodes. She's already had 3 entire episodes that could have been focused on her. Yeah, 3. In her first episode, we go to her childhood home, but all we found out is that she's Southern. This was literally news to me because she talks so little I didn't realize she was doing an accent. The episode was mostly about Moxie being insecure and setting up Stolas' relationship drama. In the other episode, we discover she had the same ex as her husband. And it literally doesn't even matter to the episode. It was only a couple of mentions because that episode wasn't for Millie, it was just a Moxie episode. Millie's such an add-on to Moxie, she's an add-on to his relationship drama too. And that happens again! In the third Millie episode, that was yet another Moxie episode, you learn Millie likes attention? Amazing stuff. Maybe in the next 10 focus episodes we'll discover her love of breathing and not dying. Millie is boring. And from Vivian's tweet, Millie is supposed to be healthy. That means the writers, 3 of them, have this weird perception of what being healthy means. Like, they know what being unhealthy is. Almost every character in the show is unhealthy. They're just miserable, make mistakes all the time, and are usually in the wrong. Or just evil. So you think the opposite of that is people who don't make mistakes, by virtue of not doing anything at all. That's not being healthy. Being healthy doesn't mean creating no problems and never being in the wrong. That isn't required for good mental health, that's a byproduct of experience. Everyone makes mistakes, no one's perfect. But being healthy is being able to recognize problems when they inevitably do happen, and working to solve them productively, with thought and empathy. It's secure confidence, not absence of presence. Millie can totally be a character, be outspoken, and have flaws that cause problems. She just has to recognize they happened and work to solve them. Yeah, she doesn't even have to know exactly what to do right away, she just has to make a real effort to fix things. That's how you would write her to be healthy. Thinking back, the way Vivian praised the writing of Millie shows off a fundamental misunderstanding. She's proud of Millie in the way you'd be proud of your kid or a pet or something. About how healthy and put together she is, rather than as a character in a story. Almost everyone loves and connects with stories via characters, but as a writer you can't just view them as your babies. Characters are writing tools, and you have to get other people invested in them. Investment you have to earn, it's not intrinsic. No one cares about how cool your kid or dog is because it's not their kid or dog.
Hey, you want to see pictures?
I mean, she's right there.
Look at this pig!
Oh, you've got them. They are. Wow, she is.
She's incredible!
Okay, that's most of the bad stuff out of the way. Diagnosed. I can finally dust off the pin I made earlier about giving actionable advice to improve the show. Remember that dynamics chart in the character questionnaire? They're useful at dunking on bad writing, but I think they're even better at creating good stuff. Let's try and make Millie, the most nothing, into something. You can pull from Millie's quirks and past and start coming up with those connections. Come up with some sort of meaningful conflict or synergy she'd have with the rest of the cast. Millie grew up on a farm with a loving family and is emotionally healthy. Those 2 facts are probably related. She should assume those 2 facts are related, at the very least subconsciously. Millie, therefore, should be gung-ho supportive of Blitzo's efforts to form a found family with his employees, even if his methods are a bit creepy. Plus, if their neurons ever activated, Millie could see Blitzo's flailing attempts to bond with Luna. And then she could become a conspirator with Blitzo, hatching schemes with him to get closer to his daughter, all tinged with goofy southern wisdom. See? When you figure out a character's desires and past, it can be simple and straightforward to create a relationship dynamic. Moxie and Millie should have more reasons they like each other than they do grand generic romantic gestures for each other. Millie should also really dislike Luna. In the show, when the two have to work together, they say nothing of substance to each other and work together easily. I guess Luna calls Millie old?
Damn, you're pretty agile for an old lady. I'm like 5 years older than you.
And at some point Millie calls Luna a hellhound?
Y'all haven't met my boss Blitz and his hellhound.
I'm not just his hellhound.
What a riveting dynamic. But Luna and Millie shouldn't get along. They couldn't be more direct, incompatible opposites. Millie clearly had to work hard in a rough and tumble life on a mud farm just so she could eat, and all she ever sees Luna do is steal money from her job by slacking off. She also should be appalled by Luna's treatment of her adoptive father because Millie has seen no maltreatment from Blitzo. And considering Luna spent her entire childhood in the foster system, Luna should aggressively disagree with Millie's belief and personality that comes from a tight-knit family. It kinda writes itself. If it's too obvious, or not Vivzy-pop enough, they could add whatever spice they need to each of these relationships. But hey, compared to what exists, I think my proposed ideas are pretty good. They're decent starting points, at least. Now, just go through this treatment with all your main cast, and bam! You have a properly written cast of characters. Thanks, Yahtzee! Of course, this is just a writing tool. It isn't the law or anything, and I don't want to homogenize people's creativity, but it's the clearest and easiest method I know of to flesh out characters. If the characters were even remotely that well explored, then the relationship melodrama would be perfectly palatable, maybe even engaging. Because of the nature of screen time, more time developing the characters would mean less time trying to constantly make you feel sorry for them. That way, you aren't numb to the intense sadness that happens all the time. And then, when it eventually does happen, you'd care because it's happening to characters you're invested in. This is called pacing, properly spacing out your emotional story beats. It's probably one of the most boring fundamentals in writing, but it's a fundamental for a reason. And fundamentally, my issues with the show stem from Helluva Boss failing to do what it intended. My approach to criticism is to see what the creators wanted to do, and seeing if they succeeded or failed.
One fine-looking barbecue pit. Why doesn't mine look like that?
I don't suggest any form of cryptic mystery or season-long plot arcs, because Helluva Boss isn't plot-focused, but character-focused. Helluva Boss clearly wanted to explore personal issues and make the audience go, aww, because something sweet or sad happened. But without good writing, the audience fails to feel anything. Especially not after 2 seasons of redundant characters with redundant stories. This lack of engagement is reflected in the ever-declining amount of views, despite every new episode being on trending. People know exactly what they're getting, so fewer and fewer come back. Even as I'm recording this, another Daddy Issues episode dropped, which I didn't think was possible, since every main character had their dads explored.
The winner will get to be like the son I never had. And I'll be like the stepdad that will love you when it's convenient. Working for Mammon is a big deal to me. I can't just not compete. I'd be letting him down.
Well, shit. I guess if they run out of main characters with daddy issues, they'll just endlessly create new ones. But honestly, this show has my sympathies. When I was younger, I also dreamed of having all my cool game or show ideas greenlit, only to have the self-aware insecurity seep in. What if my writing is terrible? What if I waste the time of not only the people I worked with, but the audiences as well? Vivzy-pop is a weird scenario of a talented artist getting their dream project well before they were ready to make it good. Helluva Boss is what, her second attempt at writing? I'd have shit my pants in Vivian's position. I don't know, I think Vivian might be open-minded enough to take some criticism. I don't know her, but she seems nice in interviews and tweets. And, since Helluva Boss is an indie show, she has way fewer things preventing her from changing the show however she wants. She just has to answer the audience, really. If you look at conventional studio animation, a lot of them can't be that flexible. They usually don't change, and also die. They die a lot. When I started making this video a while ago, Helluva Boss kinda was the top dog of indie animation. So it sort of felt like a lot was riding on it being, well, a good show. I was a bit, super worried. But that's not the case now, with another indie show being a random breakout success. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around how well the amazing digital circus is doing. But I think it's so successful because on top of solid production values, it's paired with a good story. It shows that people will always be hungry for them. I am. I don't see any reason why Helluva Boss or Hazbin Hotel can't have similar levels of virality if the writing gets good. Yeah, I'm sure Helluva Boss episodes take months to make, so even if Vivian radically adjusted the show's writing right now, it'd be a long while before you see any changes. But hey, saying it gets good in Season 3 is a lot better than saying the show drops off and never gets better. Wait, does Hazbin Hotel have a different writing staff? If not, and it comes out in like 2 months, that means it's probably gonna suck. Huh. Oh well. Alright, low effort exit. No more video.
It's over!